Hello to everyone at Baldsley and Orford schools from me, Reverend Giles, and Benedict Bear. My dog Reggie also sends you his towel wags from home. It's a bit too cold for him to be in church today. He's curled up in front of the fire, like I'm sure many of you have been. Next Wednesday is a special day in the church calendar. It's called Ash Wednesday, and it marks the start of the 40-day season of Lent, which leads up to Easter. And we mark Lent by the colour purple, which is why Benedict there is wearing a purple stole. And in church, over the next 40 days, I will be wearing purple. Lent is the time when we are encouraged to think about things in our lives which we could do better. The things we need to say sorry for, and the people we need to forgive who may have upset us. On Ash Wednesday, people in the church traditionally mark themselves with the sign of the cross on their forehead, and they do so using ground up ashes. And they do that to help to remind them of the things they need to be sorry for and the things they could do better. I'm now going to read you a story from the Lion and Storyteller Bible about Jesus teaching us about the importance of saying sorry and forgiveness. And the story is called The Unforgiving Servant. Peter asked Jesus a question. If somebody hurts me, he said, and then says, I'm really sorry, how many times should I forgive him and say, hey, that's okay? Before Jesus could answer, however, Peter offered an answer of his own. He thought it would sound good. He thought it would sound big-hearted. He thought it would be the kind of thing Jesus would like to hear. Should I forgive him 7 times, he said. It seemed a lot of times to Peter, but Jesus was not impressed. No, answered Jesus, not 7 times, but 70 times 7 times. Peter scratched his head and did some quick sums. That was a lot of times. A whole lot of times to forgive someone. More times than Peter had ever forgiven anybody. So Jesus told him a story. Once there was a king, and one of his servants owed him money. Not a little money, not lots of money, but loads and loads of money, millions and millions more. One day the servant was brought before the king, and because he could not pay what he owed, the king commanded that the man and his family should be sold as slaves. The servant fell to his knees. I'm really sorry, he cried. Be patient with me, please. Just give me another chance. And I promise I will pay back everything I owe you. The king looked at his servant and he felt sorry for him. And then, much to the servant's surprise, the king smiled and said, hey, that's okay. Then he called off the debt and he set him free. The servant left the palace celebrating. And that's when he ran into another servant, a servant who owed him some money. Not loads of money, not a lot of money either. Just a couple of coins. That's all he owed him. Did the first servant remember what the king had done for him? Not for a minute. He grabbed the second servant by the throat and shook him and demanded to be paid. So the second servant fell to his knees. "I'm really sorry," he cried. "Be patient with me, please. Give me another chance, and I will pay back everything I owe." But instead of saying, "Hey, that's okay," the first servant had the second servant thrown into jail. But word of this got back to the king, and he was so angry that he had the first servant dragged back before him. "When you came to me and said, 'I'm really sorry,' I called off your debt and said, 'Hey, that's okay.' Why couldn't you do the same with the servant who owed you a small amount?" And with that, the king had the servant thrown into jail until he could repay what he owed. Jesus looked at his friend Peter and said, "God is like the king in the story." "I'm really sorry." That's what we say to God, more times than we can count. And even more times than that, God tells us, "Hey, that's okay." And all he really wants is for us to tell that to each other too, to forgive each other and say, "Hey, that's okay." Peter looked at Jesus and said, "I'm really sorry. I didn't understand how important it was to say sorry." And Jesus just smiled at him and said, "Hey, Peter, that's okay." In that story, the first servant was forgiven by the king, but that same servant could not then bring himself to forgive the second servant who owed him money. When we say sorry to God for the things we have done wrong, and we really mean it, God forgives us, just like the king in the story. But then God wants us to forgive those who say sorry to us for anything wrong they have done to us. But if we can't do this, we will be like the second servant. Sometimes it is hard to forgive people who say sorry if they've hurt us, but if they say sorry and they really mean it, we do need to find it in ourselves to forgive them so we can all start anew and afresh. I would like you to all to think about something that you would like to say sorry to God for. Something you know you shouldn't have done, or something you know you should have done better. And I'd also like you to think about someone who has said sorry to you and how you might forgive them. So I now want you to close your eyes, think about those things and put your hand together, and we're going to have a prayer. And if you want to make it your own prayer, say Amen at the end. Dear God, we know that you forgive us and give us a second chance when we say sorry. May we also forgive those who say sorry to us. Help us to use this season of Lent to lead better and kinder lives in all that we do. Amen. I hope you have enjoyed the talk and the Bible reading, and during Lent we'll be doing some more stories to tell you all about the Easter story.
But it's been lovely speaking to you, and I look forward to seeing you again. Keep safe, everyone, and God bless. Goodbye.